Go on, Temple, said a stout, ruddy student near him. I'll stand you a pint after. I'm a believer in universal brotherhood, said Temple, glancing about him out of his dark, oval eyes. Marx is only a bloody code. Cranley gripped his arm tightly to check his tango, smiling uneasily and repeated, "Easy, easy, easy." Temple struggled to free his arm, but continued, his mouth flecked by a thin foam. Socialism was founded by an Irishman and the first man in Europe who preached freedom of thought was Collins. 200 years ago, he denounced priestcraft, the philosopher of Middle East. 3 cheers for John Anthony Collins. A thin voice from the verge of the ring replied. Moynihan murmured beside Stephen Earls. And what about John Anthony's poor little sister? Lottie Collins lost her drawers. Won't you kindly lend her yours? Stephen laughed and Moynihan, pleased with the result, murmured again. Well, we will have 5 bob each way. On John Anthony Collins. I'm waiting for your answer, said McCon briefly. The affair doesn't interest me in the least, said Stephen wearily. You know that well. Why do you make a scene about it? Good, said McCon, smacking his lips. You are the reactionary, then. Do you think you impress me? Stephen asked. When you flourish your wooden sword. Meta first, said Macon bluntly. Come to facts. Stephen blushed and turned aside. Macon stood his ground and said with hostile humor, Minor poets, I suppose. are above such trivial question as the question of universal peace. Cranley raised his head and held the handball between the two students by way of peace offering and saying, Pax supertatum globum. Stephen, moving away the bistrands, jerked his shoulder angrily in the direction of the Tsar's image and saying, Keep your icon if you must have a Jesus. Let us have a legitimate Jesus. By hell, that's a good one, said the gypsy student to those about him. That's a fine expression. I like that expression immensely. He gulped down the spittle in his throat, as if he were gulping down the phrase, and fumbling at the peak of his tweeded cap, turned to Stephen, saying, Excuse me, sir. What do you mean by that expression you uttered just now? Feeling himself just led by the students near him, he said to them, I am curious to know what he meant by that expression. He turned again to Stephen and said in a whisper, Do you believe in Jesus? I believe in man. Of course, I don't know if you believe in man. I admire you, sir. I admire the mind of man independent of all the religions. Is that your opinion about the mind of Jesus? Go on, Temple. Said the sought ruddy student, returning as was his wont to his first idea. That paint is waiting for you. He thinks I'm an imbecile. Temple explained to Stephen, because I'm a believer in power of mind. Cranley linked his arms into those of Stephen and his admirer and said, بالو جوکابی میس. Stefan. In the act of being led away. Outside. Of Macon's flushed, blonde-featured face. My signature is of no account. He said politely, "You are right to go your way. Leave me to go mine. Deadless," said Macon crisply. "I believe you are a good fellow. But you have yet to learn the dignity of altruism and the responsibility of the human individual." A voice said, "Intellectual crankery is better out of this movement than in it." Stefan, recognizing the harsh tone of McAllister's voice, did not turn in the direction of the voice. Cranley pushed solemnly through the throng of students, linking Stefan and Temple. Like a celebrant, attended by his ministers, on his way to the altar. Temple bent eagerly, crossed Cranley's breast, and said, "Did you hear McAllister what he said? That youth is jealous of you. Did you see that?" I bet Cranley didn't see that. By hell, I saw that at once. As they crossed the inner hall, the dean of studies was in the act of escaping from the student with whom he had been conversing. He stood at the foot of the staircase, a foot on the lowest step. His threadbare soutane gathered about him, for the askant with well-nourished care, nodding his head often and repeating, "Not a doubt of it, Mr. Hackett. Very fine, not a doubt of it." In the middle of the hall, the prefect of the college Sodality was speaking earnestly in a soft, querulous voice, with a border. As he spoke, he wrinkled a little his freckled brow and beat between his phrase at a tiny bone pencil. "I hope the matric men will all come. The first arts men are pretty sure. Second arts too. We must make sure of the newcomers." Temple bent again cross-cranly. Temple bent again cross-cranly as they were passing through the doorway, and said in a swift whisper, "Do you know that he is a married man?" He was a married man before they converted him. He has a wife and children somewhere by hell. I think that's the queerest notion I ever heard. His whisper trailed off into a sly cackling laughter. The moment they were through the doorway, Cranley seized him rudely by the neck and shook him, saying, "You flaming, floundering fool! I'll take my dying Bible there isn't a bigger bloody ape. Do you know? Than you in a whole flaming bloody world." Temple wriggled in his grip, laughing still with sly content, while Cranley repeated flatly, at every road shake. A flaming, flaring, bloody idiot. They crossed the weedy garden together. The president, wrapped in a heavy loose cloak, was coming towards them along one of the walks, reading his office. At the end of the walk, he halted before turning and raised his eyes. The student saluted. Temple fumbling as before at the peak of his cap. They walked forward in silence. As they neared the alley, Stephen could hear the thoughts of the player's hand and the wet smacks of the ball, and Darwin's voice crying out excitedly at each stroke. The three students halted round the box on which Darwin sat to follow the game. Temple. After a few moments, sidled across to Stephen and said, "Excuse me, I wanted to ask you, do you believe that Jean Jacques Rosen was a sincere man?" Stephen laughed outright. Cranley, picking up the broken stave of a cask from the grass at his feet, turned swiftly and said sternly, "Temple, I declare to the living God, if you say another word, do you know? To anybody on any subject, I will kill you, Superstone." He was like you, I fancy, said Stephen. An emotional man. Blast him. Curse him. Say Cranley proudly. Don't talk to him at all. Sure. You might as well be talking. Do you know farming chambers as talking to temple? Go home. Temple. For God's sake, go home. I don't care a damn about you, Cranley, answered Temple, moving out of reach of the uplifted staff and pointing at Stephen. He is the only man I see in this institution that has an individual mind. Institution, individual, cried Cranley. Go home. Blast you, or you are a hopeless bloody man. I'm an emotional man, said Temple. That's quite rightly, and I'm proud that I'm an emotionalist. He sidled out of the alley, smiling slyly. Cranley watched him with a blank, expressionless face. Look at him, he said. Did you ever see such a go by the wall? His phrase was greeted by a strange laugh from a student who leaned against the wall. His picket cap down on his eyes. The laugh, pitched in a high key and coming from a so muscular frame, seemed like a whinny of an elephant. The student's body shook all over, and to ease his mirth, he rubbed about his hands delightedly over his groins. Lynch is awake, said Cranley. Lynch for answer straightened himself and thrust forward his chest. Lynch puts out his chest, said Stephen, as a criticism of life. This video is taken for Navi Daria's page.